The warrior's tomahawk whistles toward his skull. Time slows to a crawl. Andrew Jackson's pulse hammers as steel splits air where his head was just a heartbeat before. Blood streams down his weathered face. This moment defines America's walking contradiction perfectly and completely. Democracy's champion who commits systematic genocide. The orphan who fights for common people while owning slaves, defending freedom while destroying entire nations with calculated brutality. From the Carolina wilderness emerged a force that would reshape American democracy itself forever and completely. But every triumph carried the seeds of tragedy. Every victory demanded a terrible and lasting moral cost. Every American story begins the same way. Blood-soaking virgin soil, ambition devouring conscience, white settlers stealing dreams from indigenous people who had walked these sacred lands for countless millennia before Columbus arrived. Gunpowder smoke chokes the Carolina air like death itself approaching. A woman's labor screams pierce the night while war rages outside her cabin door. She births America's turbulent future into violence and chaos. Border wars rage over his birthplace like competing gods of destruction. Even in the womb, Andrew Jackson tastes conflict and violence. The frontier doesn't care which Carolina claims him, only that it shapes him into steel. Death stalks this family like a starving wolf in winter's depths. Andrew Sr. dies before his son draws breath. The grave yawns open before the cradle, teaching harsh lessons about survival and loss. Elizabeth Jackson forges her boy in fire and scripture daily without mercy. Weakness kills, she whispers over his cradle. Mercy is luxury the frontier devours. Be iron or become food for the wolves and enemies. War explodes across the Carolinas like wildfire in the summer of 1780 completely. 13-year-old Andrew tastes gunpowder and blood at Hanging Rock, watching neighbors die for an abstract idea called freedom and independence. British dragoons capture the Jackson boys like hunting wolves stalking their prey relentlessly. An officer demands Andrew clean his boots. The boy spits in his face with defiance. Steel splits his skull open wide. Fever boils Robert's brain on the prison ship like hellish fire burning. Andrew watches his brother's eyes roll back, listens to his final rattling breath. Then smallpox devours his mother. He stands utterly alone, 14 years old, orphaned, scarred, burning with rage and unending hatred. He carves one truth into his soul. The powerful devour the weak unless the weak learn to bite back harder than their oppressors. Law books become weapons in his hands against his enemies. At 17, he studies jurisprudence not for justice, but for power and control. In courtrooms, words kill more efficiently than bullets. Knowledge means survival and dominance. The North Carolina bar admits him in 1787 reluctantly after careful consideration. A frontier lawyer emerges, quick-tempered, sharp-tongued, absolutely certain that compromise equals surrender in every situation. His tongue cuts like his sword through enemies. Nashville in 1788, a cesspool of mud, violence, and golden opportunity for ambitious men seeking fortune. Speculation fever burns in every saloon, perfect hunting ground for a man who smells weakness and exploits it. Rachel Donaldson. Robards' beauty that stops hearts and a marriage that cages her soul in perpetual misery. Jackson sees both prison and prisoner clearly. He chooses to break the lock with his own hands. Louis Robards explodes in jealous rages regularly, threatening divorce like a weapon of control. When he finally abandons her completely, Rachel and Andrew believe they're free. Love makes fools of everyone, even the strong. But Robards lied about the divorce papers deliberately and with calculated malice. Their 1791 wedding ceremony transforms them into adulterers by law. This lie will poison their marriage for 37 years of whispered accusations and social shame. Adulteress? Nashville society hisses behind Rachel's back like serpents in the garden. Jackson's pistol answers insults with death and blood. 14 duels later, his gun speaks louder than courthouse documents or whispered lies from cowards. Charles Dickinson, Tennessee's deadliest marksman and biggest mouth in the territory without question. He calls Rachel a whore in public. Jackson accepts his death warrant disguised as a duel challenge, knowing one must die. Dawn brings judgment and death to the dueling ground. Dickinson fires first. His bullet cracks Jackson's ribs like kindling. Then Jackson aims with surgical precision and kills his enemy stone dead with one perfect shot. Lead nestles against his heart like a cold lover, pulsing with every heartbeat through the years. Death lives inside him now, patient and intimate. Some wounds never heal completely, becoming permanent reminders of violence and mortality. Business empire rises from frontier speculation. Land deals, racing thoroughbreds, cotton kingdom built on slavery. The Hermitage blooms from wilderness into southern paradise, built on human bondage and stolen Cherokee dreams of their ancestral homeland. By 1804, he owns 100 human souls like livestock for his plantation. Men, women, children reduced to property and chattel. Democracy's champion builds wealth on others' backs while preaching equality and freedom to white audiences. War ignites Jackson's soul like gunpowder meeting flame in complete darkness. Major General Jackson transforms Tennessee farmers into killing machines through sheer volcanic will and threats of personal execution for cowardice or desertion. Fort Mims burns like hell itself in August heat. 400 settlers die screaming under Creek tomahawks and knives. Jackson swears bloody vengeance that will echo through generations of Native American suffering across the American continent. Through Alabama wilderness, his army starves and rots like corpses in summer heat. Soldiers beg to desert. Jackson draws his pistol. "I'll shoot deserters myself." Fear conquers hunger. Discipline trumps compassion in his military code. Horseshoe Bend, March 27, 1814. Creek warriors shatter against his artillery like waves against stone cliffs. 800 dead Indians, 49 dead Americans. Mathematics of conquest written in blood and gore across the battlefield. Treaty signed in blood and tears of the defeated, 23 million Creek acres stolen. Jackson forces even his Creek allies to surrender their homeland forever. Trust America? Here's your first lesson in white man's promises. New Orleans, January 8, 1815. Wellington's battle-tested veterans march toward American earthworks with confidence. Jackson crouches behind cotton bales like death itself, calculating, patient, merciless, ready to slaughter advancing British forces with devastating artillery. 2 hours of industrial slaughter and carnage, and British hopes forever. Over 2,000 British casualties against 13 American corpses. Jackson becomes America's greatest military hero since George Washington himself had crossed the Delaware River. But peace had been signed 2 weeks earlier in Europe by diplomats. The victory was magnificent, pointless, and transformative for his reputation. Heroes are born from timing, not just courage alone or battlefield skill. Florida bleeds from Seminole raids into Georgia territory. Spanish governors beg for help controlling the escalating violence. Orders arrive, pursue the raiders, but don't cross borders. Jackson burns the letter with contempt. 1818. Jackson invades anyway, capturing Pensacola, executing British agents like a conquering king seeking glory. Congress screams treason and demands his head. Monroe whispers thanks privately. Sometimes disobedience pays better than orders from Washington. Spain sells Florida rather than fight this madman again in another costly war. His unauthorized war becomes official policy overnight. Jackson proves that audacity trumps authority when you win decisively and deliver results. In 1824, 4 candidates compete for one ultimate prize. Jackson wins the people's vote but loses in congressional backrooms through political dealing. Politicians steal what voters gave him freely. The betrayal burns forever in his heart like acid. Adams becomes president through Clay's support, then rewards Clay with Secretary of State position. Jackson calls it a corrupt bargain. Democracy murdered by aristocrats in silk suits and expensive educations from Harvard University. 4 years of careful preparation and strategic planning follow. Jackson's supporters build America's first modern political war machine, mobilizing farmers against Harvard-educated elites who despise their crude, violent champion completely and openly. The 1828 campaign becomes a bloodbath of character assassination and personal attacks. They call Rachel a bigamist whore. Jackson's allies brand Adams a Russian pimp. Democracy reveals its fangs and claws to America. Victory tastes like ashes in his mouth when it finally comes. Rachel's body lies cold while cannons celebrate his triumph. He trades America's highest office for his deepest grief. Love dies with democracy's birth. 20,000 supporters storm Washington like a conquering army of frontiersmen. They shatter White House china, celebrating their champion's victory over silk-stocking aristocrats. Democracy has sharp elbows and rough manners from the frontier. The people's president keeps loaded pistols in his desk drawer for protection. Democracy and violence dance together in his mind like lovers. Power flows from gun barrels more than ballot boxes. His kitchen cabinet governs like a startup company, bypassing his formal advisors for newspaper editors and street-smart operatives. Trust flows to loyalty, not credentials or established protocols from Washington's traditional power structure. South Carolina declares war on federal tariffs through nullification doctrine. Jackson responds with rope. I'll hang John Calhoun for treason. Unity through intimidation, his favorite governing strategy throughout his entire political career. The bank symbolizes everything he despises about America. Eastern money manipulating Western farmers, aristocrats controlling democracy, wealth devouring the common man's dreams like a financial cancer eating America's soul from within. Biddle commands money like a king commands armies in wartime. Gold flows at his whim while farmers starve in fields they'll never own. He funds Jackson's enemies, believing wealth conquers democracy and the people. The bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it first. Jackson strangles Biddle's institution by withdrawing federal deposits systematically. Economic panic erupts across the nation. Jackson never wavers once from his destructive course. 2 pistols click empty inches from Jackson's heart outside the Capitol building. Divine intervention or mechanical failure? Jackson beats the would-be assassin unconscious with his walking cane in righteous fury and rage. Providence protects me, Jackson declares with absolute certainty and unwavering faith. He believes God personally endorses his mission to destroy democracy's enemies, regardless of bloodshed required for victory and the preservation of union. Gold fever erupts on Cherokee sacred ground like a disease. White miners swarm like locusts, violating treaties and Supreme Court rulings. Jackson watches, smiles, and does absolutely nothing to stop the illegal invasion. Chief John Ross fights back with white man's weapons of civilization. Courts, Congress, written constitutions, newspapers printed in Cherokee syllabary. Civilization can't save the civilized from savages wearing expensive suits and political power. John Marshall made his decision. Now let him enforce it. Jackson allegedly snarls about the Supreme Court ruling protecting Cherokee rights. Presidential power trumps judicial authority when backed by bayonets and popular support. Congress legalizes ethnic cleansing with the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Jackson's pen transforms genocide into government policy with one signature. Benevolent policy, he calls it, while sharpening knives for the slaughter. May 1838. Federal bayonets surround Cherokee homes in coordinated military operation. Families clutch children, grab nothing else. Soldiers herd them into stockades like cattle awaiting slaughter. Civilization shows its true face to the world. 800 miles of death and suffering through winter. 4,000 Cherokee corpses mark the trail of tears. Children freeze in their mother's arms. Jackson's benevolence reveals its true genocidal face. I have done my people great service, Jackson writes about removal with satisfaction. He genuinely believes genocide is kindness, that destruction is salvation. Self-deception completes his moral transformation into a monster. Florida's Seminole Wars devoured 2,000 American lives and $20 million in costs. Some tribes fight back successfully, vanishing into swamps Jackson's armies can't drain or penetrate with their superior firepower. White settlers celebrate like vultures at a feast of stolen land. Millions of stolen acres open for cotton cultivation, enriching planters while extending slavery's empire westward across America. Democracy means opportunity for chosen races. Jackson tucks Lincoya into bed with Cherokee lullabies while signing death warrants for the boy's people daily. Love and genocide share the same hands. Contradiction lives in his heart like a cancer. Loyalty trumps law in Jackson's world completely and absolutely. He embraces corrupt friends while destroying honest enemies for identical crimes. Justice bends to affection like wheat bends to wind in storms. The Petticoat Affair scandals Washington society completely. Washington society snubs Peggy Eaton for alleged adultery and loose morals. Jackson defends her honor, splitting his cabinet. Gossip governs America as effectively as constitutional law and democratic processes. 1837. The economy crashes like a house of cards in a windstorm. Jackson's war on banks triggers a financial tsunami that drowns his successor completely. Victory's price falls on others' shoulders, not his own. Retirement brings no peace to the Hermitage plantation at all. Jackson's body crumbles under decades of violence, bullets, infections, dueling scars. Pain becomes his most faithful, constant companion until death claims him. Texas independence ignites his imperial dreams one final time in his old age. Jackson yearns to annex the Republic, extending slavery's empire across the continent. Conquest never satisfies his ravenous appetite for land and power. Pilgrims flock to the Hermitage, seeking wisdom from democracy's living legend and hero. He preaches union and popular government while enslaved hands serve mint juleps to his guests in Southern hospitality and tradition. Death arrives like an old friend at his bedside. Dropsy drowns his lungs while his heart finally surrenders. "I hope to see you all in heaven," he whispers. Even death can't resolve his contradictions. His grave becomes democracy's shrine for American pilgrims. Pilgrims ignore the slave quarters rotting nearby, worshiping only the hero they prefer to remember. Memory is selective, convenient, and cowardly about uncomfortable truths. His Democratic Party dominates American politics for generations to come. Jackson's populist DNA infects Lincoln, Roosevelt, and every president who claims to champion common people against elites and established power structures. But the Trail of Tears haunts his legacy like a vengeful ghost forever. Cherokee descendants remember genocide, not democracy. History's judgment depends on whose screams you hear echoing through time. His face graced $20 bills for 94 years of American history. Ironic currency for a man who despised paper money and central banking. America adores complicated heroes, not simple ones with clear morality. Statues topple across America in our time of reckoning. Cities rename Jackson streets and Jackson parks. The reckoning with his genocidal legacy arrives 3 centuries too late for justice or redemption. Yet his democratic revolution endures like wildfire across the political landscape. Every politician who claims to fight elites echoes Jackson's populist DNA. The methods evolve, the message remains eternally seductive to angry voters. How do we judge a man who expanded democracy while orchestrating systematic genocide? Who championed common people while owning slaves? America still bleeds from this question of moral complexity and contradiction. His legacy mirrors America's soul completely and perfectly. Noble ideals corrupted by racial hatred, democratic promises stained with imperial blood. These contradictions define us today, whether we confess or not to them. That tomahawk at Horseshoe Bend still flies toward us through time itself. Will we duck like cowards or stand and face the blood on our heroes' hands and our own?